What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're diving back into New World with some of my favorite legendary weapons for each playstyle. Now, some of these are simple and straightforward, others are more complex, and they have a ton of synergy. Now, some of these are also data mined, others are obtainable right now, so please keep in mind that lots of this may change over time. But this lineup is one that I am really excited for, and I believe they will do extremely well. So just as a reminder, this list is 100% my opinion. Some of these might not appeal to you, but I do want to hear what legendaries, or maybe even some of the perks that you're excited to use later in the game. So let's go ahead and get things started with the Ice Gauntlet Winter Wish. So Winter Wish is all about self-synergizing damage increases and boosting your critical damage and your critical chance. This gauntlet drops in the Garden of Genesis dungeon from Alluvium Marl, and it comes with a Cruel 4 gem inserted that increases all of your damage done against targets with an active crowd control status effect like stun, slow, root. And this is where that self-synergizing comes into play, because almost every ability for the Ice Gauntlet has the potential to slow enemies, which means that this bonus should be up nearly all of the time. Then you pair that with the 11% increase to both critical damage and critical chance, and you have a pretty high-powered weapon from the get-go. But the Winter Wish does have one additional perk to help with AoE damage, and that is Chain Ice. Chain Ice will make all of your hits cause chain attacks to nearby enemies, dealing ice damage. So overall, this one's going to be incredibly powerful against lost enemies since they have a weakness to ice. So let's go ahead and move on to number 17, the Obsidian Warhammer. So this two-hander is all about self-healing. It comes with 3 huge perks that are going to help leech from enemies, heal whenever you deal damage with Path of Destiny, and also heal you when you kill something. Now, this makes the Obsidian Warhammer a fantastic weapon for tanking, or for those of you who just love that self-healing style of build. So overall, this one is straightforward. Can't wait to use it in dungeons, and we do not know where this one comes from quite yet. So let's go ahead and move into number 16, and that's going to be our first healing staff, Will of the Ancients. So this staff focuses on increasing your total healing, but it also has 2 perks that are going to reduce your cooldowns, and that allows you to squeeze more skills, aka more heals, protections, all of that, into each encounter. Now, Will of the Ancients does come with a Rally 4 gem slotted, which will increase your outgoing damage and healing while you're at full health. It's a nice bonus. I'm not really totally sold on having this one in particular in there, but honestly, there isn't another one that really makes more sense. So it's kind of the best we got. And the nice thing about this set of perks is that there are some opportunities to double dip on passive effects. So for instance, the Absolved passive on the healing tree will remove the mana cost from light and heavy attacks. But if you dive a little bit deeper into the passives connected to that node, heavy and light attacks will also heal allies and remove debuffs from them. But let's dive a bit deeper into the ways that this staff can really synergize with those attacks. So next up we have Revitalize, and this causes light attacks to reduce all of your cooldowns by 5%, lowering that cooldown even more. Intensify will cause heavy attacks to increase your healing by up to 30%. Then on the Protector tree, we have Protector's Touch, which causes any life staff attack to give you a 15% Fortify buff, which reduces incoming damage. Then if you take Protector's Strength on top of that, you'll heal for 10% more when you have a buff, aka Fortify. So as you can see, we're stacking a ton of bonuses on spamming heavy attacks and light attacks, and the Will of the Ancient staff will maximize that. So if you're a healer, this is one that you just really kind of got to get your hands on. And the nice thing is, this weapon is available in any dungeon as a global drop. So you don't have to go through and farm one particular dungeon. You can run any of those dungeons and you'll have a chance to get it. So let's keep this thing moving and go to number 15. So number 15 brings us a one-hander called the Voidbringers Reaper, and this comes with a free gem socket and a handful of perks. These are going to help deal damage over time and return some of your health. So let's go ahead and break down what we get to see on this weapon. We have 1 Leeching Flurry. This is going to cause each hit of Flurry to restore about 30% of the damage done as health, which is quite a bit. We also have Keenly Jagged, which is going to cause critical hits to apply a bleed that deals 7% weapon damage per second for 10 seconds. And lastly, we have Keen, which increases your critical chance by 11%. So all of these perks are going to boost some of the other perks that you can find in passive trees. So for instance, we have the Heavy Puncture node. This causes any heavy attack on a bleeding target, including that Keenly Jagged perk to extend the duration of any rapier bleeds by 2 seconds. Now this extends the 5% damage increase buff given by the unerring node as well, because you're hitting a bleeding target. So there's a lot of self synergy that goes into this one, and there's a lot of ways you can kind of take the perks that come with this weapon and prop them up with other perks found in those passive trees. If you're looking for the Voidbringers Rapier, you can make it yourself with weaponsmithing. So let's go ahead and move into number 14 with a bow called the Creeping Recurve. Now with this one, we're seeing some of the perks we've already covered, like Keenly Jagged, which causes crits to apply a bleed, Chain Nature, which is going to deal AoE nature damage, and Keen, which increases critical chance. Plus, this recurve comes with a Cruel 4 gem slotted, which increases damage against targets that have crowd control effects. And this gem is going to play strongly with the Skirmisher tree, since that last node is called Knee Shot, and this allows you to keep slow on enemies pretty much with no penalty. You just keep shooting them in the legs, and they keep having that slow buff applied. Not to mention that you have other small passives like Mark, which increases damage to enemies with a debuff. So between Knee Shot, Jagged, Poison Arrow, your target should constantly have a debuff that will stack the damage bonus of Mark plus that Cruel Gem. So if you're someone who really likes kind of balancing those debuffs and increasing damage because of it, I think this one might fit well into your arsenal. Now you can find this bow as a drop from Fulgda or Forkos in the Garden of Genesis. This weapon, pretty much, guys, straightforward, simple, and effective. I'm excited to see what people can do with it. Moving to number 13, we have our first Great Axe, the Axe of the Final War. So if you're someone who loves to play a barbarian, a whirlwind barbarian specifically, this is 100% your weapon. It comes with an empty gem slot, so you can put whatever you want in there. I would put a Gambit in there. It's going to increase all of your damage when stamina is not full. And the perks that this thing brings to the table just seem super fun. You have Chain Fire, which is going to cause fire AoE damage between nearby enemies. Plus you have Fortifying Whirlwind, which gives you a buff that reduces your damage taken whenever you hit an enemy with Whirlwind. And then lastly, we have Mortal Power. This gives you a 15% damage buff for 5 seconds when you kill something, including rabbits. So if you're out fighting other enemies, other players, you can kill something small and get that nice damage buff that maybe will turn the tide of a fight for you. Who knows? So we don't know where this weapon comes from quite yet, but it was data mined, and I'm really excited to get my hands on this one. Keeping this thing rolling, let's move into number 12, and that is Shield of Suppression. Now, obviously, this needs to have a sword with it, and legendary shields can't just be used on their own, so we'll talk about a sword that's going to pair really well with this one next. But the Shield of Suppression gives some great tanking perks. So we have Sturdy, which is going to reduce the amount of stamina that it takes to block, which is super important. Then we have Slash Shield Ward, which is hard to say, but this reduces the amount of slash damage that you're going to take, and slash damage makes up a big portion of enemy damage, right? A lot of what they do is slash damage, so this is going to be extremely valuable. Lastly, we have Refreshing Ward. Now, Refreshing Ward is going to reduce your active cooldowns after you're hit 5 times. And this is going to be a huge bonus. I mean, as a tank, you're constantly taking hits. So this will help you get those skills like Defiant Stance, Shield Rush, Shield Bash. All of them are going to be off cooldown much more quickly. And this is going to help with aggro control and keeping some debuffs on targets, which as a tank is obviously going to be super important. Now, there aren't a ton of different passive nodes that synergize with this one specifically, but I feel like the perks themselves are enough to justify equipping it. If you're interested in getting this shield, you can actually craft it yourself through weaponsmithing. So let's talk about number 11, which is a sword that can go with the Shield of Suppression, and that is Curiosity Greed. Now, this one-hander is literally built for tanking. I mean, everything this thing brings to the table is to make tanking easier for you. You have a pre-slotted gem, which is Taunting 4. This increases all of your threat. You have Hatred, which once again increases all of your threat. Then you have Keenly Fortified, which grants a Fortify buff on critical hits. And then you have Keen, which increases your crit chance. So you shouldn't have any issues pairing these two weapons up, the shield and the sword, and then getting a huge amount of passive bonuses to make taking dungeons, bosses, all of those things much, much easier. If this sounds like something for you, don't worry. Just like Will of the Ancients, this is a global drop from all of the dungeons, so just continue running dungeons. Eventually, you'll get it. Moving into number 10, we have a fire staff named Firebinder. This drops from the Blighted Greenskeeper in the Garden of Genesis. Now, this weapon has some really great perks. Now, they don't really play off of each other or self-synergize, but each one gives a really strong buff or a utility, especially that mana regen buff whenever you use the Burnout skill. So this staff does come with a Rally 4 gem, which increases all of your outgoing damage and your healing while you're at full health. And being a ranged caster in the back, you really shouldn't be under 100% health too often, so we should have a nice DPS bump that's pretty much always up. Now, Firebinder also comes with the Chain Fire perk for AoE fire damage. It comes with Vicious, which is an increase to critical damage, and like I mentioned earlier, the Efficient Burnout perk increases mana regen for a short duration after using that skill. And believe me, you're going to need this. Fire staves naturally use a ton of mana, so that's going to be extremely helpful. Now, there aren't a ton of synergies for this weapon, but it's just a good overall damage stick that any kind of fire mage player can use. Let's move into number 9, and that gives us a DPS sword named Primordial Edge, which oddly enough gives a straight dexterity boost instead of strength as a base stat, but this does come with some decent perks that are going to increase your damage. Now, the sword does come with a cruel gem that will increase damage against targets with crowd control effects, and that's going to play really nicely with the Leaping Strike skill or paired with another weapon that grants heavy debuffs. But we also get to see our first new perk named Rogue, and this is going to increase your backstab damage by 18%, making it great for ambushes, or if you're trying to DPS while a tank holds aggro, you're going to get a nice damage boost. We also have Keenly Jagged and Keen, which are going to increase your critical chance and apply bleeds on crits. So while this might not be the highest DPS weapon in the world, it's going to be really good for those people who love to play as a sword and board DPS. Now, if you want Primordial Edge, this drops from the Blighted Greenskeeper from the Garden of Genesis. Let's keep this thing moving along, and let's talk about our first musket at number 8, called Infamy. Now, this weapon is a DPS powerhouse, and it is perfect for opening shots against enemies because it has a pre-slotted gem that increases damage done by 30% against targets with full health. Then you pair that with its other perks that increase the critical hit chance of the weapon, critical damage, and the enchanted perk, which increases all of your light and heavy attack damage done by 9.5%. You're looking at a weapon that is all damage all the time. If you pair this weapon with the sharpshooter tree and take advantage of the headshot bonuses that grant Empower, and then damage increases the further you are away from the target, this musket is going to be awesome in both PvP and PvE. The cool thing is you can target farm this one. You can find Infamy as a drop from Alluvium Marl in the Garden of Genesis. Coming in at number 7 is another sword named Brilliant Refraction. And this one has a really cool perk that I haven't seen anywhere else yet, and that's Contagious Reverse Stab. So this is going to cause the reverse stab skill to transfer an active debuff from you to your target. And I can just see the montage clips now, right, of people using this in PvP to drop like a burn debuff or something like that onto another player and then really kind of flip the script on them, right? Because it transfers it from you. It doesn't just copy it, it transfers it. So I'm curious if that also transfers the duration and if it stacks with anything else. I don't know. There's a lot that kind of plays into that, but it's really, really cool that it's there. And I just know there's so many cool scenarios where this perk is going to come in handy and people are going to really kind of just abuse the hell out of it. So besides that one, the sword also comes with Keenly Empowered, which grants Empowered on critical hits. It has Mortal Lifesteal, which restores 4% health when you kill something, and it does come with an empty socket, so you can put whatever gem in there you would like to. Now, this weapon is actually a world drop from Denman or Meldew. Both of these are named elites in Eden Grove. So if you're looking for this one, go farm them, and it has a chance to drop along with a ton of other stuff. So number 6 on our list is the first spear that we're going to be talking about, Spear of the Corrupted Assault. So this weapon gives a blank gem socket and has some nice buffs for critical damage and grants Empowered on critical hits as well. And to top that off, you get some nice extra AoE damage with Chain Lightning. Overall, I mean, this weapon doesn't do anything extraordinary, right? But it does give some nice buffs. It works well for most situations, and it makes it a strong pick if you really don't want to specialize too heavily into anything, but still want to take advantage of some of the nice buffs that the legendary weapons bring to the table. Now, if this one sounds like something you'd be interested in, unfortunately, we do not know where it drops from quite yet, but I'm sure we'll have that figured out once the game launches. So let's move into number 5, and that's going to be another spear, the Javelin of the Dryadic Empowerment. Very, very much a mouthful on that one. So this weapon literally thrives on critical damage. All of its perks revolve around increasing critical chance, critical damage, and then when you crit an enemy, you gain empowerment for a short period of time to deal even more damage. And to top this thing off, it comes with a free gem called Exhilarate, and this increases your damage done by 24% to players below 30% health. And you heard that right. This gem is for players specifically. So if you don't play into PvP, the gem's not going to be much use to you, but everything else will come into play for you. So if this one sounds interesting, you can find this spear as a drop from Chartis in the Lazarus Instrumentality dungeon. So roaring in at number 4 is the Conqueror's Spear. This is basically the spear equivalent of the Obsidian Warhammer. This thing is all about health leech and lowering cooldowns. The perks it comes with are Lifesteal, which is going to give you 1% into half of your damage back as health. It also reduces maximum cooldowns by 3% and is going to cause every hit of your Cyclone skill to heal you for 31% of the damage done. So again, this one doesn't do anything extraordinary, but if you're someone who really loves using Cyclone, then this is going to have a lot of self-healing for you. It also comes with an empty gem socket, so you can throw whatever you want in there to make it really, truly your own. We don't know where this one drops from quite yet, but again, like the other ones, we'll probably find out soon enough. So let's go ahead and move into our top 3. So number 3, this is going to give us another bow called the Warpwood. And if you're into headshots and poison arrows, then you're going to love this one, right? This weapon causes anything caught within your poison shot to gain weaken, which is going to reduce their damage done for a short duration. It also gives a flat increase to headshot damage, about 14% increased headshot damage. And it comes with keenly jagged, so critical hits are also going to apply bleeds. You pair this with your skirmisher tree and a cruel gem to increase damage against crowd control effects, and suddenly you have a weapon that's going to deal monster damage. Now, the cool thing is the Warpwood can be crafted using engineering, so don't feel like you have to go out and farm this one. Get your engineering up and it could be yours. So let's go ahead and move into number 2, and this is another Warhammer on the list, the second Warhammer. This one is called Fury. Now, this two-hander is very similar to the Javelin of Dryadic Empowerment. It is literally all crit damage and crit chance increases. You pair that with the Keenly Empowerment buff, which gives empowered whenever you crit, and the only difference here is that this weapon comes with a Retaliation gem, which gives a 15% damage boost after you receive 3 hits. Now, there isn't too much to say about Fury. I mean, it's a crit stick. I think players are going to enjoy it. If you like damage, if you like crit builds, I mean, this is you. So if you want Fury, it drops from Chartis in the Lazarus Instrumentality dungeon. Now, the last legendary we're going to talk about today is also the first weapon of this type we're going to talk about, and that is the hatchet named Honor's Bane. Now, this one-handed weapon has some decent perks, and it makes it extremely flexible for most situations. So first up is the Opportunist Gem. That's going to give you a 20% damage increase against targets with less than 30% health, which is great for finishing off enemies quickly. Then we also have the Corrupted Bane perk, which gives a nice 18% damage boost to any corrupted enemies. You also have Chain Lightning for some nice AoE lightning damage, and then Mortal Lifesteal, which gives you 5% health back when you kill something. So while this hatchet doesn't really do anything special or over the top, I feel like it's just going to have a place for some players. It just does what it does well, or at least it seems like it will. We don't know where this one comes from quite yet, but like other ones, we're going to figure that out pretty quick after launch, I'm assuming. So guys, that is it. Those are my top 18 legendary weapons that I want to get my hands on in-game and then use in later builds. I feel like they all bring something different to the table. But like me, you're probably thinking, wow, Vulkan, there are a lot of perks that are repeated throughout all of these legendaries. And I agree, I think so too, right? I hope we get to see some more unique perks as the game evolves and they add more legendaries, because, I mean, things like that Contagious perk are really, really cool, and I would love to see more of that type of creativity for a lot of these. Now, I'm assuming this is not everything, but these are the ones that are available now, the ones that people have found in game that have data mined. So we'll see what we have once we actually get into the game and the game fully launches. But this is just one half of the gear, right? We also have armor to talk about, and that's going to be my next video. I want to talk about legendary armor, so I hope you all enjoyed this one, but I want to ask you, what legendary weapon are you most excited to use? Which one seems the most interesting to you? And if it's not on this list, what is it? Drop it in the comment section below. Let's talk about it. I want to hear from everybody, and thank you guys so much for all the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.